The Nassau County Chamber of Commerce is committed to strengthening relationships by connecting businesses, leaders, and citizens through meaningful conversations.
Our candidate forums are designed to give the voters an opportunity to hear directly from the candidates on the issues shaping Nassau County.
We sincerely appreciate the candidates participating.
And we thank you for being an informed voter. We hope you enjoy this forum, and we encourage everyone to get out and vote.
Well, good morning, everybody. On behalf of the Nassau County Chamber of Commerce, my name is Sean McGill. I'd like to welcome you all here to our City of Fernandina Beach Candidate Forum. And on behalf of the Chamber and the Board of Directors, I'd also like to thank our candidates.
Stacy McMonigal.
Miss Stacy.
Scott Inglis.
And Mr. Len Krieger. So for those of you that have been through this before, we'll have a question and answer period. The candidates will have a time to introduce themselves first. My job as moderator is just to keep our conversation going. We welcome questions from the audience. I am not here to fact check. So if Miss Stacy says that the sky is purple, sky's purple. We will let that go. You guys can fact check each other if you'd like. I know we're gonna have a great discussion. And as we get started here, I'd like to let Miss Stacy introduce herself and take 2 minutes to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Stacy McMonigal. I grew up in Jacksonville, born and raised in Jacksonville, and I loved it. It was a very diverse community, lots to do there, which is one of the things I really like about Fernandina. So, but I ran a law firm over there for 10 years, and then I worked in the hospitality industry as a concierge for 17, and I ended up here at the Amelia Island at the Ritz-Carlton for the last 5. So I really know a lot about tourism, and it was my favorite industry. As much as I love the law, I really love tourism. And then I moved into home health aid. So, and I actually really enjoy that. And one of the best things I really like about that is that I get to put teams of people together into homes that really complement the person that we're taking care of, and that everybody brings something to the table. And that's a real strong point of mine, is recognizing, how people work together and to help others. I guess the reason you want to know why I decided to run for City Commission, because I ran 4 years ago and said I wouldn't do it again. I realized one day, I woke up and all of a sudden we had paid parking, and I just felt completely and totally betrayed by that decision. How you don't know that paid parking is like completely and totally taboo to people here that live here in Fernandina, I don't get. But nonetheless, I decided that I needed to look around me and decide whether or not I wanted to run again, and I really felt like it was absolutely necessary. I thought that the city, the residents actually deserved a third choice, and so I threw my hat in the ring, and here I am today.
Thank you, Miss Stacy. Mr. Scott.
Yeah, hi, I'm Scott Inglis. Been here 35 years. The Navy brought me down here. I grew up in a little town outside of Chicago and called Fox River Grove. I lived on the river there when I was a kid. And then I joined the Navy to see the world, and I ended up down here after doing submarine duty in Connecticut. After got down, like I said, I got down here, and first thing I asked at Kings Bay is like, where's the beach? And I said, oh, you got to go to Fernandina to get the beach, So I went down to Fernandina, fell in love with the place, rented an apartment on the beach for $350 a month, and started volunteering at Fort Clinch. That was, and then about a year later, I met my wife scuba diving, and we got married at Main Beach at the third gazebo on the north end, if anybody still remembers all the gazebos down there. I finished out my Navy career in 2006, and then worked down at Tiger Point Marina as a mechanic, and then worked other various jobs, and then went back to working for the federal government, where I became an inspector, and then I was a shipbuilding specialist. And about 47, I had this midlife crisis where I decided to quit working a good federal job, and I went to school full-time and became an X-ray technologist. Went to FSCJ, used a library down there, and loved it, and was an X-ray tech for about 5-6 years, and then moved on from that. My physical, all the days of pumps and valves and everything, just kind of wore my body out, so I started volunteering. For the last 3 years, I've been in charge of the Shrimp Festival. I was the chairman of Shrimp Festival and moved the Shrimp Festival forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Len Krieger.
Yeah, I'm Len Krieger. I was also born in Chicago and raised in Chicago. Left when I was 17 and spent 24 years in the Marine Corps. After the Marine Corps, I spent 20 years in facility management. Moved here in 2008 after coming here in the winter for many years. As soon as I got here, I became involved with volunteer work in the government. So I spent 6 years on the Planning Advisory Board, including a year as chairman, 7 years as a commissioner. I termed out in 2022, 5 years on the regional planning, Northeast Regional Planning Council, along with various committees throughout that time, and I'm currently on the Fernandina Beach Board of Adjustment. I'm basically running because I felt that in my 7 years, or really the 13 years, I've contributed positively to the city, and I can continue to contribute in a time where the face of the city has changed. So we have become reflective, in my opinion, of the rest of the country, totally polarized, and I think I can help bring us back to being where we were, a nice community.
Thank you, Len. So thank you. We're so great to meet all of you. We're going to take 1 minute here, call it a little bit of a warm-up question. I know you guys have touched on it a little bit. Scott, we're going to start with you this time as I work my way around. But in a minute, tell me a little bit more, if you've already touched on it or if you haven't, of why you are running for office.
Well, the standard joke is, in order to get out of running Shrimp Festival, you need to run for city commissioner. So that was my standard one. But the real reason is I'm a resident, been here a good while, and it's just time for the city commission to start listening to its residents. Often they don't listen, or they just go ahead and do something without even getting any input. A perfect example is the 3 ball fields they wanted to do at MLK Park. They just said, hey, we're just going to put in 3 ball fields. And then, until there was an uprising from that part of the community, they didn't, then they stopped. So.
Thank you, Scott. Len, a little bit more.
Well, as I said, I believe I can continue to contribute. There's a lot of issues going on right now. The biggest issue in this city is management, funding, and capital improvement. Because of paid parking, we have not looked at those yet. Hopefully we will begin to look at them. And it's especially important with the potential referendum in November on property tax, and homeowners exemption. So I think I can provide a balanced, view and work with consensus. No commissioner does anything by himself, period. And so in 2015, my primary goal was stormwater. Before that, we didn't even have a stormwater department. And we'll get into that later because that is a big issue in the city.
Thank you, Len. Ms. Stacy.
Like I said, paid parking, but that was the thing that got me into the race. I actually understand that the city commission does not listen to the people at all. City government seems to have gotten so big that they just seem to think that the residents are their servant, when actually public service, they're supposed to be the servant to the residents. And it got completely flip-flopped, and I have a real problem with that. I understand public service. I've been in service a long time in my life. Everything I've ever done serves other people, and it's paramount that we understand that we're the servant to the resident. The resident isn't the servant to the government, and they need to listen to their residents. Residents actually know who Fernandina is, at the very core who we are. We're a very welcoming community. Paid parking doesn't say anything about it. It's just completely wrong, and so on so many levels. It just said to me that they don't know who they're serving. They seriously have no earthly idea who the residents are, and I hope to just be able to represent their point of view.
Well, thank you. And I know everybody in this room and myself and folks watching at home, thank you guys for putting yourself out there and entering this race and getting these ideas. Len, as we move forward, you touched on it. So take a couple of minutes. We'll call this question a 2-minute question of what do you think are the most significant issues facing the city? And then as a commissioner and a commission, what can the commission or more directly you as a commissioner do to affect change to those issues?
Well, the most significant, and it actually is the issue with paid parking, is funding. So the capital improvement plan, which the city just approved, 5 years, has I think it's $47 million this year. So with the capital improvement plan, the state law requires both the funding of capital projects funded and unfunded. So in fact, it becomes a wish list. And as they review the wish list, when they bring it up, the staff presents this massive thing to the commission. The commission should have pushed back on that and looked at it and established priorities. You can't do everything that you want to do. Because of that is why the commission implemented paid parking, which was a mistake. So if you go and look at that capital improvement plan and put the right priorities on, and if you can't do it, you push it back into the required 10 and 20-year period. Last Tuesday night, they approved $12 million project on the waterfront. 7-point-some million of that is on a line of credit. Part of that is a seawall that's up on the north end in wetlands. You need to look at that and see if that's the right thing to do. And and staffing is another issue. How much staffing do we need? You know, what is the head count? We have a city manager, 2 deputy city managers. We used to have 1 city manager, and we did okay. So those are the things. Those are the initial things. What you do when you look at it is see if you can get consensus with your fellow commissioners to drive that. In 2015, we got consensus to move forward with the stormwater plan, which we're moving on today.
Thank you. Ms. Stacy.
Absolutely. Funding is absolutely paramount. Like I said, we spend way too much money on way too many things. And I think that we need to seriously look at the budget, and we need to, we need to look at the budget, and we need to decide what is absolutely needed, because government was created to do certain things: safety and security, infrastructure. That's what it was designed to do. All the other stuff is just really fluff. Do we love it? We do. But we're coming into a time when the home exemption legislation may come into effect, and we may be losing money and not get $2,000 next year and another $4,000 the following year, and we may be losing money on a regular basis. And we need to really decide what do we actually need in this city to keep the city running and to keep the city, the residents, safe and secure. That's pretty much where I'm focused, is on primarily budget. Maintaining our infrastructure is extremely important. And then, of course, you need your police and fire. But past that, we need to seriously stop all the projects that we're doing and seriously take a look at the budget right now and figure out what's paramount. Because that enormous wish list that they have isn't totally and completely necessary. You need to decide what's absolutely necessary before you move forward. So you kind of need to put a halt on things right now and seriously look at the budget. That would be my first, the budget, infrastructure, maintaining it.
Thank you, Stacy. Mr. Scott.
It's a pile of problems, and everyone's being pulled from a bunch of different directions. One thing that I've really think, 3 things I think is important. One of them is obviously the finances, and they've got that covered pretty well. The next one is the infrastructure, and we're talking about the older infrastructure. And with infrastructure, it doesn't mean let's do everything in the 8 blocks downtown Fernandina. There is a lot more to Fernandina than just those 8 blocks that are downtown. There's all these neighborhoods, there's street lights that people ask to have their street lights turned on, and it just gets ignored. If you go down North 6th or North 7th Street, South 7th and South 6th Street, it's like a roller coaster. All they've done is just patch and patch and patch. People just want their streets. They want their streets done. They want lights on for security reasons. You know, the other thing is that the city does horrible at, and they do a real bad job at PR. I mean, nobody explains anything to anybody. And it's always at the last minute, and it's, oh, by the way, we did this, you know. And if you can explain how things cost and why it's this and why are we doing this, you know, that calms down a lot of people. I did that with Shrimp Festival. When I first took over Shrimp Festival, it was taboo to talk about money at all. They just, oh no, we don't talk about money. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. You know, people need to know that it's $17,000 for the porta potties. You know, people need to know that this money comes in and that the money goes back out. I think that's important. The finances are, yeah, we have to take a look at the budget. You know, I started looking at some of the budget and I had some questions, and it was, you know, it was hard to find answers to those questions. And I think as a commissioner, I could help that.
Thank you. I do have a quick follow-up question. I'd like you guys each to take a minute. You guys have all touched on it. We're going to start with Lynn on this. Is maybe drill down a little bit more into what your priorities would be. We've heard budget, we've heard infrastructure, but can you be a little bit more specific on what you would want to be attacking right away if you were elected?
Well, I would look at the whole capital improvement plan and look at them independently and put in priority exactly what we're supposed to, life safety first. And Scott hit on an excellent issue. Drive down 6th Street, South 6th Street, and it is a roller coaster. There's patches and patches and patches. We're putting $1 million in the streets close to it, and it's not enough. So those are the things I would do. I would look at the life safety first and put the priority on them like it's supposed to be and move forward with them. Again, Scott was right. This is a lot more than downtown. So when we get to the seawall, downtown is not the risk for flooding. The risk is on Egan's Creek. The risk is around the Scambia Slough. And that's what we need to look at, those types of things that affect the whole city.
Thank you, Len. Ms. Stacy.
For me, it is infrastructure. Okay, it is sidewalks. It is streets. It is lighting. You know, the things that make a city livable are the most important things. So that's where we need to really put our money. I'm not into all of the projects that they want to do. I think you really need to prioritize those. And for me, one of the priorities, if you want to know the honest to truth, is downtown. I actually think that downtown has been neglected for a really long time, and it deserves the attention and the money that we need to put into it. But it doesn't have to fall on the people of Fernandina to pay for that. Okay, there are other historical districts, about 8 of them if you include us, where their historical districts in small towns are really in the same condition that we are, because tourism has come in and has really overwhelmed the infrastructure of those small towns. If we can get together and build a coalition with those other cities, we can go to Tallahassee and we can also get them to address TDT dollars to specifically deal with historical districts, because historical districts do put heads in beds. That's exactly what it does. You can have a shrimp fest, you can have the Dickens on Center, but those two things are built on the foundation of the historical district. That's like the piece de resistance here in Nassau County. You have like 1.2 million visitors that come to Nassau County on a regular, every single solitary year. And the numbers say that 77% of those people actually admit going to downtown Fernandina, and they love it. They return to it time and time again while they're here, and then they go home and they make plans to come back. So this is like a gold mine, and we're completely and totally ignoring it. And we need to put our money where our mouth is, and we need to do something to help out the businesses down there. And like I said, I do not think that it has to fall on the backs of the residents. I think we can get a coalition of other historical districts to come together, and we can maybe do something up in Tallahassee about this.
Thank you, Ms. Stacy. Mr. Scott.
I mean, you hit on very good points about the historical thing, historic downtown, and the fact that, you know, in Nassau County, people don't come to vacation in Hilliard or Callahan. They come to Fernandina. They come to the island to vacation. You know, the TDT dollars are controlled by the county. Our commission right now does not have any meetings with the county commissioners. They used to meet every 90 days and sit down and have a talk with each other and communicate. And I think that's one of the big problems that we have right now is nobody's communicating, nobody's talking. They're just focused on their own little thing, and they're sitting there flopping and twitching. And it just doesn't work.
Thank you, Scott. And actually, I'm appreciating this conversation because I'm way past any of the questions that I actually prepared. Let's take another minute. I'm going to follow up and start with you, Scott, on the relationship between city government, county government, school board for that matter. You had said they need to meet more. Take a minute to talk a little bit more about your thoughts on that, and then we'll go to Lynn and Stacy as well.
Well, you know, just kind of just like what I said. I mean, we don't talk to the county. I mean, a perfect example of that is that they're doing the beach harmonization plan, where the city has to cough up millions of dollars, and then the TDT money will be infused with that. Right now, they're going to work on Seaside Park. I looked at the plan on Seaside Park. They're going to redo all the decks, and they're going to put up some gazebos, and they're going to leave the bathrooms the way they are, and they're going to pave the driveway. They're going to do bricks in the driveway, and then they're going to put a pile of plants in there, and it's going to cost you about $3.5 million. And it's like, why do we need to do that? I mean, granted, we might need to redo the decking and things like that, but it just seems like an awful lot of money.
Thank you, Scott. Len.
When I was on the commission, we met not quarterly, but annually. We actually had a sit down and we met annually at a public meeting with the commission. Relationships with the county has been difficult consistently. It became a little bit more difficult in the past 6 years when the TDC money actually became significantly under control of the county. The county, it's a tax money. So if you talk about harmonization was actually approved over 4 years ago by the TDC, which I was on, by the county, and by the city, which I was on. It sat for 4 years in planning, while the money for the beaches, 10% of the TDC funding was dedicated until last year to beaches. Now they've changed that, so we should talk further about that.
Okay. Ms. Stacy.
Businesses and government are built on relationships. So it's imperative that we get together and speak to the county commissioners on a regular basis. I wouldn't even be happy with like every 3 months. I think we should probably try to get together a couple of times, like, I don't know, every 8 weeks we should like have a short meeting and get together and find out what's going on, you know, what we're thinking about. The biggest thing I've noticed is that, like with the seawall right now, okay, like the city hasn't even put the money, hasn't even like done the paperwork to see if, so that for the seawall to the to the county, so that then it has to go to legal review. We haven't even done the paperwork, people. We haven't even sent the paperwork in. So now it can't even go to legal review. And if it can't go to legal review, then it's not going to get funded. I mean, there are steps that we have to take, but we also need to communicate, and we need relationships with each other. So I think businesses are built on relationships.
Thank you. And continuing our discussion with the relationships, we'll say between the city and county. Len, we'll start with you on this one, and we'll call this a 2-minute question. Are there areas of duplicative services between the city and the county that, for cost-saving measures, could be integrated, one way or the other? And what would you do to do that?
Well, yeah, there are. You've had discussions for years of the potential of merging the city and the county. Could you merge fire departments and police departments? Yeah, you could. Would you want to do that? It depends on what you feel about levels of service. So we have 6 police cars on in the daytime and the nighttime. Do we want to merge with the county and go to 3 to save money? Fire protection the same way. With the county, in the city, we have mutual protection or mutual agreements. So we actually, they will respond and we respond. So I would look close at fire departments and and on buying equipment, expensive equipment, when we have a mutual agreement. So I don't know how much you could merge streets and sanitations, possibly somewhat of that, but I don't know that the citizens, this is where the citizens really come in, what the citizens would really want to do. I would estimate that Fernandina Beach does not want to share police and fire with the county. And before I even looked at that, actually, I believe police is a referendum issue anyways by the charter. So I would look real close at those things. And if we can get services and share, they've talked about the building departments sharing, and that always comes, the county does better, we do better, there's different software. Some of that might be worth doing, but the land development codes are different. So do we want to merge those? I don't know. So when annexation comes in, it becomes problematic, because even the zoning districts are different in the requirements. So, but I do think it's worth looking at, and I think you're going to have to look at it.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Stacy.
So this kind of got brought up to me about 4 years ago, and I had to really take a look at it, because the idea of merging your police and your fire, okay, it's going to cut costs. That's great. Unfortunately, it's actually 2 requirements in order to be your city. If you want to be a city here in Florida, the 2 things you have to have are police and fire. So if we want to give up the idea and not be a city anymore and not have our own city council, well, you can give up your fire and police, but I don't advise it. I think Fernandina is much better off being the city that it is. And yes, it costs us money, but they do an excellent job, and they're worth every penny that we spend on them. So as far as any others, probably not.
Okay.
Probably not. No. I like it being very distinct. So.
Understand. Mr. Scott.
Yeah, it's, I looked at the police and fire, and just a small thing of the retirement program that the police have makes it almost impossible to separate or to combine those 2. I mean, you would lose a lot of personnel, and you would lose a lot of regular knowledge, and the local knowledge of then that police officer now is policing in Callahan, and somebody from Hilliard or Bryceville or somewhere is coming in and being a policeman here. There's that's pretty tough. I mean, the other one that would be perfect is, let's just make Fernandina take over the whole island, but nobody's going to pay double taxes when they don't have to. So, I mean, that's another no that won't happen. I think Parks and Rec could, start, the county started a Parks and Rec, I forget, 5 to 7 years ago, and they're up and coming. I think it's time for them to start sharing some of the other burdens that the non-city residents have within our area, so that's a real tough one to say that I'm gonna do this, because it just isn't probably gonna work out.
Okay, and as we pivot a little bit, we're going to continue with comparisons between the city and county, but looking at it from the business community side, this will be a 3-minute question. We're going to start with Miss Stacy. Lots of subparts to this, so you can feel free to ask me to repeat it if necessary. But there tends to be a perception that it's easier to do business in the county versus within city limits, that it costs more, that there's more regulations. Do you think that's true? And if so, what can we do about it?
It probably is true. I would have to admit that. Yeah, it's probably true. I think getting anything done in City Hall is probably pretty difficult, whether it be regulations, whether it be, trying to get something built or something altered or whatever you're trying to do. It seems to be much more difficult. I think they could take a real lesson from the Ritz-Carlton as far as anticipating people's needs and trying to provide them before they actually are mentioned. Customer service goes a long way, and I don't think the city has very good customer service. Sometimes sometimes they seem to be overburdened, and they seem to be really busy down there, and so they just they're staying focused on what they need to accomplish. But the residents come first. Tourists always come first. When you're in a hotel, believe me, guests come first. Everything comes to a screeching halt when a guest walks into the building and asks you for something. It doesn't matter where you're going or what you were doing. And I think the city needs to do the same thing. But they also need to be friendlier with their policies and just how they basically manage everything. So.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, it is more difficult. I went to the one of the board meetings, and a lady stood up, and she wants to buy the building next door to her, and she asked, what do I need? And it's like, well, you need to put in a permit for expanding your driveway. You need to put in a permit for your fence that needs to come down. And oh, by the way, there's trees growing in your fence, so the arborist needs to come and look at that to make sure that you're allowed to cut those trees down. I mean, the whole thing that I got from that is just that you come in and you just don't know. And if you have to go and you ask and you get short answers, and then you also get multiple answers of like, well, you can take the fence down, but you got to leave the tree. Well, we know the tree's attached to the fence, but just work around it, And then I think there isn't a clear, with businesses and everything, that there isn't a clear, this is what you have to do next. This is the next step. This is the next step. This is the next step. Instead, there's just a bunch of different opinions, and you go to different departments, and they don't work together. It just seems like, well, go over here and see what they say, and it's like, well, they said this or they said that. And it just never seems to be the same answer with everybody. And we really need to look at that. It needs to be streamlined. It's like, we want to have a business come to Fernandina, and we want you, and how can we help you, instead of how many roadblocks can we put up against you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Len.
I don't know if it's more difficult in the city or the county. What I know is it can be difficult. So I did a review of probably the last 5-6 years, and I sat on the commission for 7 years. And invariably, it seems to be the problems come with the permitting system, which can be bad. And part of the system is to go, when you want to build, you go to the technical review committee, and you can go in there and they'll tell you what you need to do. But it hasn't been very user-friendly, and they did inject things that weren't required by code. So I've looked and I've seen no formal study, and the chamber would contact people or commission when there's an issue, and they would try to get in there and interject and see what they can help people do. I would certainly look at a more formal survey process to see what we need to do. There's new software. There's a new state law, I believe it's Senate Bill 803, which allows for expanding outside services. So the city you can even get your plans reviewed by somebody else, and the city can't really stop it. There's a 10-day limit, so those things will help. I can tell you the county is not nirvana for sure. I'm on an organization, we're trying to build 16 houses, and dealing with the county is complex and troublesome as all that I've heard in the city.
Okay, just one little follow-up to that. We'll start with Ms. Stacy. So you guys, have shared that the perception might be reality. We're not going to say whether it is or isn't, but whether it's a little bit more complex regulations or higher costs, what's the benefit? What does somebody get out of that for moving their business to the city or continuing to do business in the city versus outside of city limits?
Residents are loyal to the businesses inside the city. That's what they get. They get a loyal customer base. People will stay, and people...
Okay.
That's what they get.
Fair.
I mean, I love Nassau County, but I rarely go over the bridge anymore, okay? I mean, I love Nassau County, but not like I love Fernandina. People who live in Fernandina, they're loyal to Fernandina. They love their businesses, they love the restaurants, they love everything about it, and they're genuinely content there. We're just a loyal group of people. We know who we are, and no. So.
Fair enough. Any thoughts on that, Mr. Scott?
You know, I went to Los Amelias Cafe and met that couple that just opened their new restaurant. It used to be where O'Brien's was, and it's been multiple restaurants over the years and a bar and things like that. It used to be a gas station. They that couple moved from Miami to come up here. He's a truck driver, and she worked in corrections. And she came up here and she said, this is where we want to be, and this is what we want to do. And they opened a restaurant, and they don't know nothing about a restaurant. They just said, we opened this restaurant, we don't know nothing about it, but we can cook good food. You know, so that's somebody that's actually trying. And, you know, Fernandina should make it where they're welcome and make it easier for them to run that business. And, you know, and that's great for them to come and try to start that. When I ran Shrimp Festival, I started Nassau Place, and that was 2 streets where small businesses of 6 or less could come and show their wares. It gave people the opportunity to try to do a business in Nassau County, in Fernandina. One lady was so successful over Shrimp Festival weekend that she opened a brick and mortar store on 8th Street. Another lady sold glitter and figured out that parents don't want glitter all over their cars, and she failed miserably. But she learned from that. So that was what was important.
Okay, Mr. Lime.
It was sort of a trick question. I mean, a business comes here based on what they're doing and what they see they can make money. It's just an economic decision. So window manufacturer is probably not going to come on 8th Street where a restaurant may desire to do that. And they make those choices based on what they want to do. So as Stacy said, the downtown is certainly a draw, but it's kind of interesting because we actually have vacancies down on Center Street. But the business makes that decision where they want to go based on their economics, and hopefully they're smarter than the glitter lady.
Yeah.
But then the cities should make every effort to accommodate them and assist them in bringing their business here.
Okay. Following up on that, and we'll start with Mr. Scott, take 2 minutes, we'll say, on this one. How do we deal with all of the various competing interests within the city? We've just recently been talking, say, primarily small businesses, restaurants, tourism, but we also have residents, and then also we'll call it our larger businesses. You know, we haven't really chatted at all this morning yet about the mills and their impact on the city. So how do we balance all that, you know, on behalf of the residents?
Well, you have to. I mean, you have to balance it all, and there's a lot of people. I always tell people that the standard is people move here, they're retired, and they get bored, and they find something to be passionate about, whether it's the sea turtles or the right whales or the beaches or the trees, or they decide to open a business. There's just so much different people and different varieties of people, and everyone's pulling from different directions. They get very passionate about what they believe in, and that's good. You know, it makes us a good melting pot of society where we have a lot of different things going on, which attracts people to our island. It's one of those things that, you know, we have to be able to listen and balance all of that. But, you know, the bottom line is who pays the taxes here, and it's the city residents, and they have more skin in the game than anybody else.
Okay.
Balancing it is really pretty simple. We have a comprehensive plan with 11 elements that guide everything from future land use to conservation and everything. And that's actually amplified by ordinances and the Land Development Code. And it talks about levels of service. How fast will a police police respond? How much water do we need? What are all the requirements? And you balance those. So every 7 years, we have an evaluation and appraisal, which is a public process to look at those and see if we need to modify them. And that covers the industrial issues. So you look at that, and that's how the city's run. The city is not, it's got to the point where everybody thinks the city's done everything bad. That's not true. The city does many things well. Our protection is well. Our fire protection is well. Our stormwater is moving. Take a look at what happened after all the I was here for 4 hurricanes that were really tropical storms. On the city's response to that, the city's not the bad guys. Politically, they become the bad guys, and they certainly can do improvements. But those things are in place, the comprehensive plan, to provide guidance. And one is very simple when you want to talk about comp plan and restrictions to protect the people, is the Ryan issue with the bioethanol. It's prohibited. The city did the right stuff and moved on, and it's in court, and we'll see. But that tells the city what to do. That's there for a reason. Land use, the Tringali case, what happened in Tringali? City bad judgment decided to proceed, but the law was specific. The court supported it. So the instruments are there. They can be changed, and they need to be looked at.
Thank you, Len. Ms. Stacy.
Repeat the question.
Basically, how do we manage the competing interests of whether it's the residents, the visitors, small business, large business, across the entire community?
I always choose I would always choose residents over projects, and I appreciate businesses because we need businesses for the economy. Okay, you can't do without your businesses. Definitely residents over projects, but you guys are absolutely imperative to the health and welfare of our residents, and I would like to see different businesses, let's talk large and small, come together. I like communication. I really think that if you could get a board where small and large businesses come together, there's a wealth of knowledge there. There's a wealth of creativity there, and maybe they could help us come up with some of the ways that we could improve Fernandina and make it more friendly and just a better place for everybody to live. But if you aren't communicating, even small businesses aren't communicating with each other, and then, they come before the county commission and share their ideas, you've got a wealth of information out there that you're not tapping into. And so I would start, trying to get some groups together that, actually could speak this specifically to what you guys need to make it better and see what we could do.
Okay, so a little follow-up to that question. These aren't meant to be gotchas at all. This is a conversation. We'll start with Scott. So obviously, a business as an entity is not a voter, like residents are. Employees of businesses could be voters, but businesses within city limits are taxpayers. So how do we make sure they do have a voice at the table?
I looked at, it just kind of that dawned on me, there's a lot of businesses that are here, like you said, in Fernandina, and they don't live in Fernandina, so then they can't vote. It's amazing the amount of people in Nassau County over the bridge that have a Fernandina Beach address that think that they can vote here, and they can't. And but it's important that any commissioner takes the time and listens to the businesses. And I'm one of those people that would do that, listen to your businesses, listen to what your problems are, what your concerns are. I'm available. You can call me, you can email me, let's have a cup of coffee. Let's figure out how we can work together. And that's important. I mean, it's just important to open up that communication and work together, as opposed to just, oh yeah, I don't have time for you. I'm too busy running, my 8 restaurants or doing whatever. I mean, I'm available, and I'm just one of those people that would listen.
Thank you. Len.
I think that it's interesting. Take a look at the county assessor and see what the taxes are and what they do pay. And some pay significant taxes, businesses. So how do you handle it? A lot of the big businesses, Smurf Restaurant, they have people that are paid to coordinate with the city. A recent case of a land development code change for the grease disposal is going to impact cities. So the city actually did, in this case, they did the right thing, and they went out and they had, public outreach to those facilities, those restaurants that it would affect. On the other hand, the coming stormwater fees, which are going to significantly impact big business and churches here, they failed to go out. So I'm sure you're aware that it goes from $34 a month to massive costs, and for a place like Publix, that's going to be in the thousands of dollars a year. They failed to do that. You need to do that. You need to reach out for those issues when it affects a business, and proactively reach out. And like I say, with the grease things they deal with, the stormwater, they did terrible. So now they try to play catch up. Can we do it over 3 years? That'll probably be the thing. Will that work? I don't know. We'll see how that comes out. They'll be voting soon on that. So,
thank you, Len. Ms. Stacy.
Yeah, actually, there are a lot of businesses in Fernandina where the owner doesn't live inside the city limits, and they need to be heard. They need to be listened to, and they need to be their concerns need to be taken into consideration, and solutions need to be found for them to tell the truth, because they're vital to the economy of Fernandina. Fernandina is such a beautiful place. It's so vast in its interests and the types of businesses that we have, and the unique quality of those businesses. I mean, it makes who Fernandina is. I mean, do you guys travel? Do you go to small towns? Like, one of my favorite things to do is to go to small towns, and the first thing I'm looking for is it's the new businesses that are there, or the businesses that have been there for years, and how they're marketing themselves. Fernandina it's a remarkable place, and the businesses need to be honored. They need to be listened to, and they need to be understood, and we need to find solutions for them. Because they're the backbone of Fernandina, and the residents deserve to have wonderful businesses here. And if it's not a friendly place to do business, businesses will leave. And that's not good.
Thank you. Okay, we've got 2 main questions left, and then we'll wrap this up. I've saved the easy ones for last. We'll start with Mr. Len on this one. You guys have alluded to it earlier throughout our conversation about the November referendum regarding homestead exemptions and property taxes, which could reduce the amount of money coming to municipalities, whether it's a city or a county. So my questions is do you support that referendum, whether it's a yes or no, and what do we need to be doing to plan for that, assuming it's passed?
I would definitely not support it. Okay. I happen to live in California when Proposition 13, which you'll start hearing more about, where this exact same thing happened. What was likely to happen is the city has already done estimates. They say they're going to lose 16 to 30% of their revenue. Actually, I don't know if that's true. The city actually has 8,800 residents, of which 4,400 or 50 to 51% actually have homeowners exemptions. So if they were to lose it, and 26% of the city's revenues comes from ad valorem taxes. So just looking at it, Bradley, without looking at each house, they would probably lose 15% right away. So what's going to happen? You're going to see things services, you're going to see fire protection districts. First thing you're going to see is services get reduced, particularly, generally what goes first are the recreational services. You're going to see fire protection districts. People have talked about that for years, where everything becomes a service charge. And nothing says at this point, the language is in court now, nothing says at this point that they can't reach the millage rate. So we're paying like six mills to the county. Tonight they'll do something about probably 4-something mills to the city. They can up that. So that's going to go on the shoulders of the non-homesteaded people, which are residents in many cases, part-time owners. So I definitely would oppose it. And, you know, they need 60%, so we'll see.
Ms. Stacy.
I'm for it. I think people need a tax break. So I'm absolutely for it. And I understand the city's going to have to button down and figure out where they can cut some costs. But I don't think the cutting of the cost has to come from essential services. I think we need to like relook like all those projects that they have out there, all that huge gigantic wish list. Maybe you need to put some of that on hold. Maybe we need to be a little more thoughtful about what we choose to do and where we need to spend our money. You know, if you're a homeowner and you're working, I'm a single person. I work. You know, when things get a little tight, I like looking at where I need to cut my budget. I don't go asking people for more money. So I think it's a perfect opportunity for the city to have a facts check and see where we need to cut things and what we need to do about it. I'm not actually afraid of it. I believe we have some really good grant writers, or at least one. I think if I was going to hire anybody, and I'm not for hiring anybody right now in the city, okay? It just costs way too much money to hire another person. But if I was gonna hire somebody, I'd be hiring myself another grant writer to complement the grant writer we've already got, because they actually bring money in. So.
Thank you, Ms. Stacy. Mr. Scott.
I'm for it. I think it'll be, you know, it's going to provide relief to some people. I don't think it's going to provide a lot of relief to your average resident in Fernandina Beach when your tax bill is, you know, thousands and thousands of dollars. So it'll help a little bit. But, you know, the person whose tax bill is, you know, $1,000 or something like that, it'll eliminate a lot of that for them. And, you know, that's the people that, you know, they need that break. Are we going to lose, you know, essential services, police and fire? That's the saber rattling that they're doing now. It's like, no, you're not going to lose police and fire. You are going to have to adjust. I mean, it is going to have to adjust to look at, like Stacy said, the projects, the special projects. You know, when are we going to do this? You know, I'm one of those type of people that we don't need to go get a big loan to do some gigantic project. Let's work at it a little bit at a time. Where can we get the money? You know, the waterfront, the Brett's waterway, the Brett's removal and things like that. They did a great job of getting grants. You know, they pooled money from different resources. And I think that a lot of times that's what we need to do. It's kind of, to me, that it's kind of a check. It's kind of like a, whoa, slow down. You're paying, you know, you're spending way too much on a bunch of stuff. Do you need to pull back a little bit to see what's important?
Okay, thank you. All right, I lied. 2 more questions. We're going to start with this one with Ms. Stacy. Assuming you're elected, I think everybody understands you're one of 5 commissioners, that you might have a different opinion than one of the other or a majority of the other commissioners. How would you try to sway their opinion to go with whatever your point of view is on a particular issue?
First, you got to have your facts straight, and you got to speak truth. So that's really important. But also, I mean, like I said, it's all about relationships, guys. It's all about communication. So you got to be as forthright as you possibly can be, but you also have to be really friendly and respectful of everybody's opinion in the room. But you also have to sometimes you just got to keep talking, and sometimes you got to know when to shut up and bring it up later. So it takes a little bit of wisdom, but it is doable, okay? These people are not, they're for Fernandina. I really think they okay. At least one has brought his own agenda to the table, but nonetheless, most of them really love Fernandina, and they want us to do what's best for Fernandina. And you just have to go in there with that attitude that you can work together and you can come up with what's best. And And you got to do it friendly, and you got to do it honestly. And you can't back down when you feel really strong about something.
Okay. Scott.
You know, I really think, I mean, and I've watched, sat there at the commission meetings for about the last 9 months, and it's just, there's always a feeling of nobody did any research. They're just like shooting from the hip of, you know, maybe they looked at an email and they're like, okay, well, here's my opinion, and off we go. I really don't like how they just dismiss the boards and committees that they have. You know, different boards, you know, present things to them and they're like, yeah, okay, whatever, we're not listening to you. But it's time to really kind of work together. You know, I mean, let's take a minute and let's listen to what these other people have to say. You know, let's listen to the residents. You know, when you got 40 residents standing outside with you know, pickaxes and signs going, you know, we don't like this, you know, you need to listen to them. I think that I can help, you know, bring a little bit of, hey, you know, that's a great idea. We've researched this. What do you want to do about it? You know, and the other side of that is, you know, I could be one of those people that stops the supermajority. You know, one of, you know, if they need 4 votes and they only got 3, then that doesn't pass. You know, this next 2 years are going to be very, very difficult, you know, moving stuff through.
Thank you. Len.
You need, as one commissioner, you need, first of all, as Stacy said, you better have your facts together. And you just, you know, you better stick with it, and hopefully you can convince them. And then a good example, I ran in 2015 on stormwater. We had $15 million in requirements. We had no stormwater fee. We had no stormwater plan. We had no stormwater department. Was able to convince them all to do a stormwater plan, $250,000, which we're still working off now. Much of that money came from the state, you know, by applying for it. So you need to do that, and you need to be persistent. You need to be educated. I disagree with Scott saying that the present commission, I not necessarily support what they're doing, but they certainly do a lot. They're not stupid, and they do a lot of research. We have one commissioner who does significant research. So whether they listen or not is another story.
All right, thank you. Last question. We got to talk about it. We made it this far, though. Let's talk about paid parking. Scott, we'll start with you. You guys have alluded to it throughout, some a little bit more straightforward than others. What's your position? And, you know, depending on what happens with the referendum in August, how would you move forward with it?
Well, I'm against paid parking. And the reason why I'm against paid parking is that they did it wrong. They just, you know, they just shoved it down everyone's throat and says, here you go. Too bad, so sad. If I was going to do paid parking, I would have introduced it to the parking lots and see how that worked, and then maybe move on from there, but probably not. You know, I mean, there's a good chance that those the parking lots itself would generate enough of this, enough money. And the paid parking isn't generating the money that they thought they did. But the real problem with the paid parking is that it's just tearing our fabric of our community away. You know, I can be in the city limits and my neighbor is in the county limits, and he has to pay, and now he's mad because I don't have to pay, but he does. You know, another issue is, oh, residents get 4 hours down there. Well, if you go to the farmer's market on Saturday morning, they ding your parking meter starts, and then if you want to go down there in the evening and eat, you know, before 8 o'clock, you know, you're paying for paid parking and you're a city resident. It just doesn't make sense. The money is going to go away. Okay, well, right now they haven't spent the money. You know, they're starting to allocate, they want to allocate the money. The big scary thing to me is that they want to get 2 years worth of data and then go get a bond to attach it to, so then we have paid parking forever. You know, and another reason, and so with the voters, you know, it's up to us, the voters, to go out there and say what you want. Now, if it does not pass, or if they do allow paid parking, then okay, let's use that money, but let's keep that money for infrastructure and make it where everybody knows what that money is going to.
Thank you. Len.
I would not have implemented paid parking. I think it's obvious that they did it wrong way, the transparency and whatever. I would have done exactly what we talked about. I would have looked at that comprehensive plan and says, do we need to do $47 million this year? We don't have the money, guys. So let's adjust it and push it back to year 2, 3, 5, or 10. And that would have been it. So let's operate within the money we have. Then with the paid parking issue, if you want to discuss that, do it up front and be real straight. Actually, they're using part of that paid parking money for the $12 million they just approved for the waterfront. But the process, even many city staff think the process was just terrible. And especially as they moved on, when the massive public uproar came up, I'd have said, hold on here. When I was on the commission, we looked at paid parking many times. We never brought it forward. One of the issues was beach paid parking, which is difficult because from Sattler to the north end to 16 North, that's in the renourishment area. And although the city could implement paid parking, which if the referendum passes, or whatever the vote is, if it passes, they'll be restricted, that you cannot exempt locals. Locals would have to pay too. So we stayed away from that, and we did surveys, and we didn't move forward with paid parking at all. But I think it was a big mistake, and pretty much what Scott says, and I'm sure Stacy agrees, this has just divided the city to
no end.
Yeah, it's just been a terrible thing.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm absolutely against paid parking, if you haven't picked up on that. Actually, I think they actually sold the soul of the city for $1 million a year. And I don't know about you, but I am not interested in selling the soul of this city to anybody for any amount of money. Okay? We are a community that has always had open arms. We've always welcomed everybody that's come across that bridge and has come to Fernandina. And it's like, are we Disney World now? Are we actually charging for admission to the historical district? That's like craziness. That's not who we are. And if we can get back to the fundamentals of who this community is going forward, we got more problems than we're aware of, if you want to know the truth about it. We got to be true to who we are, and this is the first step. The problem here is that we could all decide that we don't go out and vote, and we could all decide we don't want paid parking, but they got that thing in that charter that says something about a supermajority, and they can override the will of the people if they can get 4 people to vote for it. Now you got to go in and you got to change your charter. And luckily for us, that charter's up for review next year, but you got to make sure the people that are on that team looking at that charter have the same point of view as you do. So you got to know who you're voting for, and you got to be able to trust that what they say is what they mean, and what they mean is what they say. Because what you got up there right now is not that. And you know what else I know about the people of Fernandina? They won't forget the people that voted for paid parking. Whether next time, if they want to run again, they won't be voted in. We won't forget this.
All right, well, thank you. We're going to go ahead and wrap up. I'm going to go Len, Scott, Stacy. Take a minute, tell us why we should vote for you, and also where we can find more information about your candidacy.
Well, you should vote me because, I've got a record and I got experience. You actually can see what I did and what I didn't do. I got a website, https://lenkrieger.com. Pretty much what I see this election, you're voting for three candidates who pretty much agree on almost everything, it appears, except for the referendum, which is for homestead. And you're voting for somebody, experienced or not experienced, and new. Some people want new. Some people think that old is bad. And of course, with a record, you always have an issue too. Is not everybody always liked what you did. But I stand on my record and and my experience. And and I'm motivated since I got here in 2008 to before I was on the commission. I was a volunteer of the year in Fernandina Beach. I've done it. I'm dedicated to the city.
Thank you. Scott.
Yeah, well, I've been here 34 years. Everything I've always done is volunteering. You kind of look at the commission job as a volunteer job. running Shrimp Festival for 3 years really taught me a lot. I worked with all different varieties of people, businesses, work with the city, work with nonprofits to make that 4-day event happen. You know, so that's pretty good. The other, you know, being here, I'm available. This is the only thing that I'm going to do. I don't have another job. I don't have a business on the side. I don't have a bunch of houses that I rent out. You know, me and my wife live in one house. You know, we're here, we're a resident on the island. And the only other property that I own is 2 plots at Boscobello. So,
is there a website?
Vote scottinglis.com. Look at my website. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Stacy.
So I do have a website. It's https fernandinafirst.com, and then I actually on Facebook I call them, you know, good morning Fernandina, and I kind of took the observers' questions, and I'm going in and I'm talking about reading my answer and talking about my thoughts concerning it, adding what I can to the answer. And I enjoy doing those, and I will keep doing those. If I'm elected, you can count on me being on Facebook telling you what's going on in the city and why I'm voting the way I am. I believe in communication, so you're going to hear from me. I'm not just going to sit behind the desk and make a decision and then go home and lead my life. And like I said, I'm about relationships, and I love residents. So. And I'm out talking to residents all the time, and I'm always talking about what their feelings are, you know, concerning the city. So that's probably also, I would have to say, 3 different career paths. One, you know, growing up with the law, and then actually being in tourism, and now being home health. I have to say, what it has taught me is what it is to work smart and not hard. So I believe in surrounding myself with really intelligent people that have legitimate answers for whatever I'm asking the questions for. And then I believe actually in digging down and finally getting to the truth before I'm going to tell you anything about what I think. I'm going to have a really informed opinion, and I'm not going to give you fluff. I'm not going to say something that makes you feel good about it. And I'm not going to say something that just isn't true, just to get your vote. Who I am is who I am, and I'm not going to be anybody other than who I am right now in this moment, okay? So if you're wondering, check me out on Facebook, and if you need to, give me a call, send me a text. I'll be more than happy to have coffee with you and talk to you.
Well, thank you very much. Let's give all our candidates a big hand. You made it. Again, I'd like to thank Miss Stacy McMonagle, Mr. Scott English, and Mr. Len Krieger. Thank you guys for coming and taking the time. Thank you at home watching this. Of course, a big thank you to the Chamber staff and Board of Directors for putting these programs on so that we can be a more informed electorate. Couple of reminders. Early voting starts August 6th. The primary officially is August 18th. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.